Hello, and thank you for joining us here on the Neutral Zone. I am Phil Milani, joined as always by my trusty sidekick, my partner in crime. Really, the best way to describe this person is my everything. It's at Eric Dahl.
Is that me?
Yeah, I'm talking about you, big guy.
Whoa, wow. Phil, school's out for summer.
That's true. How do you feel about this 100-degree heat we've been having? It's a little bit much.
No, I like it. You turn up the heat at the end of OTAs, you get into mini camp. That's when, as our friend DeMarcus Ware would say, the little boys separate themselves from the kids.
Yeah, exactly. You always had a way with words, that just made you really feel like, wow, that was either really dumb or really deep.
No, I think it was always really deep.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It was either or. Yeah.
Got it.
Kind of like this show.
Yeah, you're the former, I'm the latter.
I see.
I'll explain what those two words mean to you after the show.
Thank you. Maybe an email would be better. Yeah. Well, we've got a great show in store for NZ Nation here today. We're going to talk about who won the offseason program here for the Broncos. Obviously, we'll get into the quarterback competition. It's day 234 of the quarterback competition, Eric. Or are you ready to break it down?
It just feels like that. It just feels like that.
It's a marathon. Yeah, this thing is a marathon.
Wait, so you said the OTAs didn't matter, and now we're going to pick winners?
Yeah. That was your idea.
I know. I love it.
Yeah.
People want – so we're in a society that they like winners, you know?
That's true. You forced me into this topic of conversation.
I know. You wanted to just talk about Jacob Bobenmoyer for 40 minutes, and while he is a great guy, and I really admire how much film you've watched on his technique at the long snapping position, I thought maybe a little quarterback chatting could be good.
Instead, we're going to talk about where Drew Lock's feet are at the beginning of a snap.
People would love that.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to talk about who won this offseason program, and then also the flip side to that, who still has more to prove here? That's a nice way of saying who lost the offseason program, Eric. Well, we'll say who has more to prove here at the beginning of training camp, because there's a couple of guys who, in addition to the quarterbacks, they're in a position where there's a lot of competition, and maybe they've got to prove their worth a little bit in training camp.
Yeah, no, I agree. There's some guys that need to have a strong training camp.
We're going to name names, Eric. And then we'll wrap up by visiting some comments that Melvin Gordon made this week when he met the press. He said a couple of things that I found particularly interesting, Eric.
I know he did.
He felt like the Broncos, he wanted to prove to the rest of the league that this is the best running back group. Okay? And then he also said that he felt like the Broncos were not getting the respect that they deserve. He went on to clarify that it's because they haven't been winning much recently, but he still felt like not enough people are talking about the Broncos.
We're talking about
both of those things.
Well, there are certainly both things that he said, yeah.
No, but I think that you agree with the sentiment too, right?
Well, let's just wait till we get to that segment. Maybe people will stop listening by then, and I'll be able to say whatever I want.
Yeah. That's what you normally do, right? Just for people listening, you tune out after the first 20 minutes or so. That's when things really get spicy on here.
Exactly. We're like, oh, okay, we know that the narcs are gone, and now we really go after it.
Yeah. But of course, NZ Nation, nobody turns it off.
No.
Yeah.
No.
It finishes the whole thing. Yeah. That's because at the end of the show, Eric, we like to play some voicemails. We've got 2 voicemails today that I don't think anybody is going to want to miss.
That's right. Maybe you could even get a shout out too. It's possible.
You could get a shout out and some voicemails there toward the end of the episode. Also, let us know what you think of how we get into those voicemails now. We got a little audio effect getting into voicemails. Eric didn't even know that. But Ben Swanson, he's been doing some producing here. So
he's back from his month-long cruise around the world. He's, I think it was the first cruise ship that went back on the open waters.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was like around the world in 80 days situation.
Yeah. I heard they let him drive the ship a little bit.
Yeah. Well, then when he got on the hot air balloon, they had to because he was the only person up there.
Yeah. Things got crazy at that point. Yeah. Yeah. So we'll have some voicemails and shout outs a little bit later on in the show, but let's get to some comments here, Eric, on the YouTube page, because we like to start out every episode by talking about the YouTube page. If you didn't know, you could watch the Neutral Zone. You can see us fight each other here like we do every week. And then you could comment and subscribe to the Broncos YouTube page. But Eric, I don't think many people thought that the question about if Von Miller is already a surefire Hall of Famer, nobody thought that was really a good question.
No, they did not. If they'd listened to the episode, maybe they would have thought so. But it's clear people just judged a book by its cover. They got grumpy. They commented. They left.
Yeah. Even
Sorry.
I was going to say, our guy, Eric Ramos, he was like, this is an easy answer. Yes, guys. No brainer. I was like, oh.
Yeah.
Boss Artwork22 said, that's such a dumb question. I was like, oh, boy. Okay. That's Maxwell Welch. This isn't a question, baby. Okay. Cody, he says 50 more sacks and the whole NFL fan base will agree. Okay. Okay.
50 sacks would put him like third all time. So that definitely would be good.
Yes, that would be 50 sacks. That would be very good. Blade T says, okay, I get it's the off season. We have to talk about something, but yes, he's a Hall of Famer, not even an argument. Well, hopefully some people can go back and listen to the episode, Eric, and then they can, see what we were talking about. There's a little bit of nuance there, I think.
Yeah. Well, we're titling this episode, Why Von Miller is the Greatest Football Player of All Time except John Elway. And we think it'll do pretty well.
We do think. Based off of our scientific research from last week's episode, we do feel it. Yeah. Let's see here. Jabbar Sin says, love the show. Let's get a poll up to name this current Broncos defense. They have to prove it on the field, but my vote is for primetime dime. Let's get all those DBs on the field for a new era of defense, Eric. Primetime dime.
I like that. I like that. That's pretty good.
Yeah, that's pretty good. And then one of our usual commenters here, John Jornot, a big-time friend of the program, Eric, but I think more specifically, friend of Eric Dalal. He says, I sent an email that was very unlike me. John, we appreciate the email. Keep them coming. He says, I complimented Phil and Jerry Jeudy. Okay, took a shot there. Appreciate that. Then he says, it was not mentioned in the show. Okay, apologies. Sorry, John. We just thought maybe your medical stuff, maybe you just wanted to keep that private. I don't know, with your COVID stuff, but we did not mention it. But he sent in an email. We did not read it. Apologies, John. He says he thought maybe it was because Ben took an early vacation. That's definitely true.
That is true. That part is real.
That part is real. Ben did not pass it along in time. Then he says, I listened closer now, and he kept hearing what sounded like some typing. Okay. He investigated it some more and figured out it was Morse code from Eric. And John says he got the message. You got the email, but realized that COVID must have gotten to my mind and deleted the email. Eric, I just wanted to give you the floor here, and you could take some time to respond to John personally
here. Beep, 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 beep. John, you know what I'm saying.
He knows what you're talking about. YouTube is not the only way you can get involved in the show. You could email us, Eric. I'm not sure what that is, but if you want to tell people about how they can do that.
Yeah, you can leave an email at neutralzoneshow@gmail.com, or you can call in and leave a voicemail at 707-NEUTRAL, or Phil, you could tweet at us directly at Eric Dalala with an A, at Phil Milani with a PH, non-traditional spellings. Or you could tweet at Broncos Podcast. Roya Burton, our podcast social media supervisor,
Yeah.
will get right on that because she listens every week and there's no way she would miss a message.
If you just watch the Neutral Zone, you would think that there's just me and Eric who put this together every week. That is not the case. There is a team of experts, digital media experts, podcast experts, all weighing in and doing their roles. And I'm not sure if you'd realize it though. But thank you too.
Production value like this doesn't just happen on its own.
No. Thank you to Roya and also Ben Swanson. Very, very helpful. So those are the ways you can get involved. We'll play the voicemails that we got a little bit later in the show. But Eric, let's get to some football and let's talk about the winners of the offseason program. And of course, we got to talk about Drew Lock and Teddy Bridgewater. Let's start there.
Yeah, so you're declaring them winners. Is that what you're saying?
I would say both of those guys at this point are probably in the winner column.
Yeah, I think they've both done good things. Teddy, I think, has shown a good grasp of the system. He's, Pat Shurmur spoke Wednesday, and what he's working on is different than what Drew Lock is working on. Teddy's trying to get used to these play calls, get used to the offense, get some chemistry with these guys. I think he has definitely done that. I mean, you can see from the way he connects with Jerry Jeudy that they have a really nice rhythm going on. So that's a +1 in the Teddy Bridgewater category. And then I think if you're Drew Lock, you are a winner because you get to be in this same offensive system for the second time in a row that has hardly ever happened in his career. Pat Shurmur said he's taken steps forward from last year. His decision-making is better. His accuracy is better. His timing is better. He hasn't looked perfect, Phil. We've seen now, I think, 3 OTA practices, a couple of mini camp practices as we're recording this. There's been days where he's looked great, days where he's just looked so-so, but I do think that you can tell he's more comfortable with what they're doing and has a chance to still win this job. And so I do think from a Drew Lock standpoint, I've been pleased with what I've seen.
I think listeners want to know who's winning more between those two guys. Any way to tell who's ahead right now, or is that that's not even really fair to comment on?
No, I mean, I think you can say that Teddy's probably won more days that we've seen, but we've only seen, I think, 5 days, if I'm remembering back to OTAs correctly. And so we haven't seen all the other practices because there were, 7 other OTA practices, I believe, that the media didn't get to watch. And so it's possible Drew went out there and lit it up every week. I would say just looking at the mini camp when the reporters get to see the whole practice, Drew Lock pretty clearly won day one. He threw 3 touchdown passes, no interceptions, just throwing the ball down the field. And then you talk about day 2, he threw an interception, didn't look quite as comfortable. And Teddy, the whole time, I think Teddy has been just kind of a nice baseline of, you know what you're going to get from him, kind of what we've said all along, Phil. He knows how to find Jerry Jeudy. The one thing I'll say, Phil, is that as you watch this, you have to take everything with a grain of salt because some days Teddy's going against the number 2 defense. Some days Drew's going against the number 2 defense. We haven't seen Tim Patrick out there very much because of a little bit of a hamstring injury. Haven't seen Cortland Sutton in team drills at all. KJ Hamler's been sidelined. So these guys are, like if you're Drew Lock and you're throwing to a tryout wide receiver against the first team defense, it's hard to weigh that the same way that you would if Cortland Sutton was out there. So we will get a better idea during training camp. Vic said, this is 2 to 3% of the evaluation process, and it's clear it's nowhere close to over. But Drew Lock's, I'll say this, Drew Lock's good days have been better than Teddy Bridgewater's good days, but Drew Lock's not so good days have been worse than Teddy Bridgewater's not so good days. And that's kind of what we expected all along, right?
Yeah, I think so. It's from my perspective, I think what you want to see is just like a guy really jump off the page. You want a guy to just come out there and be like, wow, look at how much better Drew Lock is, or wow, look at Teddy Bridgewater, what a veteran can do. Like just somebody to just really separate themselves. We have not seen something like that. And it's also really hard to exactly know what they're working on. I know that today, day 2 of mini camp, They were working on some first down stuff, some things where, okay, you want them to throw it way down the field. You want to see them, make these big splashy plays, but they're working on different things. So I haven't really seen anything that I'm like, wow, look at how much more comfortable Drew Lock is. You don't really see that, but you hear him talk about it. You hear Pat Shermer talk about it, and then you say, okay, well, he must be feeling more comfortable. I think that's pretty much where we are right now. The eye test just hasn't really shown much separation between those two guys, and like you mentioned, it is going to be tough for these quarterbacks going up against this defense, and that's kind of what we've been used to here the last 5 years or whatever it's been, where the defense is clearly the stronger side of the ball.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you're gonna have to take that, as it is in training camp. That if like someone made a big deal, must have been OTAs, I think, that Drew Lock threw an interception to Justin Simmons, and people were like, they were freaking out. And it's like, well, Justin Simmons is arguably the best safety in the entire league. He had 5 interceptions last year. He has a knack for getting to the ball. He intercepted Ben Roethlisberger. He's intercepted Patrick Mahomes. Like, this guy knows how to make plays. And so not an issue that if once in 3 practices, Justin Simmons is getting an interception. That's what you want that. I will say, based on what we heard from Ronald Darby, one of the Broncos cornerbacks, he said the quarterbacks are making them work, that they're pushing them, that they're testing them down the field. That's what you want to hear. I think the bigger concern would be if they just if you can't get the ball off, if they're never completing passes, if it's just completely one-sided. Because the fact of the matter is, Phil, I think in this league, especially when Von Miller, Bradley Chubb, or Malik Reed isn't allowed to tackle the quarterback like they can't in practice, that a good passing offense should beat a good defense. And so you want Drew or Teddy or whoever to get to the point where they are making some plays in training camp. And, I thought last year that we saw that at times, like especially early in training camp. Drew played pretty well, I thought. He kind of hit a rut at some point in training camp, and it kind of stuck with him for part of the season. But, we'll just have to see how it progresses when they get to camp this year.
Yeah. And I do think that, I know Vic Fangio said at some point that he hopes that there's a natural separation between these guys, because at some point you want the guy, and you want that guy to get chemistry with the wideouts, with the tight ends, have a feel with the running backs, and just, have the offensive line know the cadence really well. You just want to go all in behind a guy. And so hopefully it doesn't take too long to get that. I mean, maybe joint practices in Minnesota will help increase that competition level where maybe you see some separation. Maybe it takes a preseason game, but hopefully you're going to start to see something. We just haven't seen that yet. And maybe mandatory minicamp just really isn't the time to just notice that separation.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there.
But I would say that for the most part, both of those guys have done good work this offseason. They've been here the whole time. They've worked well with the wide receivers. Nothing has looked like totally sloppy or like, hey, get back in the huddle. There hasn't been anything really terrible like that. So I would put both of those guys in the winners column right now. Eric, anybody else stand out to you so far through the offseason program?
Yeah, I think the next guy that's very obvious is Jerry Jeudy. I mean, coaches, teammates have talked nonstop about how he's come back looking more determined than ever. He's fixed some of the things he didn't do so well last year. A couple drops here and there, but nothing too bad. Especially with Teddy, he looks to have great chemistry. He's making these catches along the sideline. Looks really good, and that's still without Cortland Sutton and KJ Hamler and Tim Patrick out there. So I'm really excited to see what Jerry Jeudy can do. I think he's elevated my expectations for him. And, he dominated in training camp last year, and he did have a good rookie season. So I don't see any reason why he can't take a big step.
Yeah, and talking to him a couple of weeks ago, sounds like he has a renewed focus. It seems like last year bothered him, some of those drops and that sort of thing. And yeah, I definitely think he's probably been the one player who's shined the most either side of the ball, where you're like, this guy looks like a different player, if you ask me. I mean, he's just He has been the guy who's making those deep catches. He's been the guy who's been bringing it every practice. Today he caught a nice pass in some red zone stuff. He caught a nice pass on the sideline where he did a little bit of dancing afterward. He just seems like a pro now. He's more comfortable in Denver, and I would expect, is going to have a very good season if he can stay healthy there. The one guy on the other side of the ball who stood out to me has been Pat Surtain II, Eric. Not often that you see a rookie come in and immediately start running with the ones, especially during the offseason program. Usually they like to give some deference to some of the vets, some of the guys who've been here for a while. Maybe later in training camp, you overtake a guy. But right off the bat, Pat Surtain has been with the ones. And maybe some of that has been because Fuller hasn't been here the whole time, or maybe Darby missed a couple of practices here or there. But sometimes when we've seen them all together, Surtain is out there with those guys. And everything you hear from everybody suggests that he's really smart. He's really smooth. He's a big presence out there. He's been as advertised coming in. And I think that the coaching staff is really excited about what he can do.
Yeah, he's made some good plays, made some breaks on the ball. He's been impressive. I don't know how much stock I put into running with the ones and twos because, like you mentioned, Kyle Fuller wasn't here for a while. Then Ronald Darby missed a day, so that's obviously going to put him up there. And when they're running base nickel, their nickel package, there's been times he's been in there, times he hasn't. So we'll have to see how that works out. And we're not allowed to talk about at this point. We can't in training camp, but this point can't talk about where he's lining up, but it'll be interesting to see what they choose to do with him. Is he outside? Is he inside? I think sooner rather than later, Phil, he's going to identify himself as probably your best corner on your team, and so they're going to want to have him out there in base and nickel and dime. Every package they run, they're going to want Pat Surtain out there, I think. So you're right, he is a winner. One other guy that comes to mind for me, Phil, is the Broncos' second-round pick, Javonte Williams. He's gotten a lot of run, I think, with Melvin Gordon not here for OTAs. I've been really impressed with his hands out of the backfield. He's caught some nice balls down the sideline on some wheel routes. It's hard to really tell what he can do from a running standpoint because we've seen very limited 11 on 11 work. And even in that, no one's going to the ground and no one's even really hitting at this point. So hard to tell there, but I've been impressed with his hands. He looks the part, Phil. And I think the fact that Melvin Gordon wasn't here, I completely understand his reasoning, but does give Javonte Williams extra reps that he needs.
Yeah, and we'll certainly talk a lot more about the running back room here a little bit later on, but he seems as advertised as well. So Broncos' top 2 draft picks really leaving an impression here early on in this offseason before training camp here. They've in their career, I guess, early in their career, they've left a strong impression. So, Eric, how about on the other side of here? Who still needs some to prove? Who has some work to do?
Yeah, a lot of guys, I think. Some more than others, like guys like Cortland Sutton and Bradley Chubb. I just want to see where they are. Those are guys that we are proven guys. We know what they can do. You just want to see them kind of get back up to full speed before the regular season. A guy like KJ Hamler comes to mind, Phil. He's got to prove that he can stay healthy and make an impact in this offense. Too much, last training camp, he was essentially on the sideline with a hamstring injury. He's been on the sideline with a hamstring injury for most of the OTAs. Got to get him out there at some point. Right tackle, can Bobby Massey has a little bit of a pec strain right now. He's got to get out there and prove, can he be the guy there and kind of solidify that one spot that the Broncos aren't so sure about, which is right tackle. And then, Phil, maybe 2 guys from the other side of the ball. Baron Browning, the 3rd-round pick, again, not healthy. He's got to get out there and find a spot. Is it an inside linebacker? Is it an outside linebacker? Where does he fit? Can he make a contribution? And then Justin Sternad, I think they're impressed with what he's done. They've said, hey, he's been in the meetings. He knows what he's supposed to do, but he hasn't played much at all. Obviously missed all last season with his wrist injury. So he's got to get out there and prove that he can be a coverage linebacker, that he can help them there because they're a little thin at inside linebacker behind Josie Jewell and Alexander Johnson. So to me, those are some of the guys that stick out right off the top of my mind.
It sounds like those are all the injured guys. They got to get back out there. And, our good friend Steve Atwater, the Hoff, he has a saying. He says that you can't make the club in the tub. So you got to get back out there and you got to be able to show what you're capable of. And, KJ Hamler is one of those guys where, you have some concerns at this point, that you just wonder, okay, is this guy going to be able to hold up? Is he going to be able to play an entire season? Because we know what he's capable of when he's out there and feeling healthy. But last year, it always seemed like there was something nagging him, something bothering him. And now it's off season, some more of that. That is a little bit of a concern there, Eric. And, you just don't want something like that to hamper a guy's career because you know that he's talented. And I also think that at this point in the season, a lot of guys, when they meet the media, they like to shape things to their narrative, So like Hamler talked a couple of weeks ago and he's like, it's not a big deal. I'm fine. We're just being precautious with this type of thing. But then last year, remember all the talk was how important the offseason program was. And because we didn't get that, that's why the offense kind of had a slow start to the season, had some struggles there that continued. It just kind of is like whatever fits whatever you want to be selling. It seems like, well, if it's important and you're not out there, then that's a big deal. Or it's not important. Why are you struggling? So it's just you just want to make it fit whatever angle you're working with.
Wow, you've gone deep, Phil. You're like
crack the code.
Yeah, you have. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean for KJ, it's obviously the Broncos get an added element because they don't have someone who's as fast as him that could take the top off the defense, but not a lot of teams have that. And depending on who the quarterback is, I think that maybe it matters less if he's out there. Like if Drew Lock is the quarterback and is going to throw the ball 40 yards down the field, it's nice to have KJ Hamler to go run under it. If Teddy Bridgewater is going to take a more cautious approach, and he did say, hey, I can throw the deep ball, and it's true, but if he's going to, pick apart the middle of the field, if he's going to take the safe throws, he might not need it as much. But to me, the bigger concern is just KJ's got to get out there so he can develop a role for himself. I mean, Cortland Sutton's going to get targets. Jerry Jeudy's going to get targets. Tim Patrick has proven that he's good enough that he deserves to get targets. And so at that point, it's like, we went into last year, Phil, I think assuming that KJ Hamler was going to be the third wide receiver, and then once Cortland Sutton got hurt, that he was going to be the second guy, and that wasn't the case. And he's got to prove that he deserves to be the number 3 receiver right now behind Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy. And Tim Patrick's not going to give up that role easily.
Yeah, and KJ had some really high moments last year where he caught the buzzer beater against the Chargers, falling into the end zone there. He had the big plays against the Panthers last year. So really a talented guy. You just want to make sure that he could stay on the field and get healthy. Eric, when we're talking about these winners and people who have more to prove, it's hard to talk too much about defensive line, offensive line. It's hard to judge these guys when they're not wearing pads, they're not going up against each other. Really not exactly sure where everybody stands. But one guy, when he talked to the media, who made it seem like he had something left to prove was your guy, Sir Lloyd Cushenberry III. He made it sound like he was not happy with how he played last year. Obviously, the Broncos went out and drafted Quinn Miners in the 3rd round. He probably feels like he still has something left that he needs to prove here.
He probably feels like that. I don't feel like that as much. I think there's 3 ways that you look back on a season, maybe more than 3 ways, but here's 3 of them. You either look back on a season and you say, man, I played a heck of a year. I was really good. I thought I did a lot of really good things. And for the sake of this argument, each of these seasons is the same. They're all about average. But you look back on your average season, you say, hey, I did a lot of good things. Then you can be a guy that you did about average, and you're like, man, I I was poor, I was terrible, and you kind of undersell it, and you like know that you were much better than that, and it's not genuine. Like if you're an all pro and you're like, oh, I was fine, like that's not genuine.
Yeah.
Then there's a guy that is like Lloyd that I think genuinely believes that he didn't have a good season. He genuinely looks at that and says, I didn't play well enough. When in reality, he beat out two veteran players for a spot. He was the second rookie in Broncos history to start at center in week 1. He was one of 2 NFL rookies to play every offensive snap, and he was an all-rookie team member. I mean, to me, when you say something to prove, he might feel that way, but when you look at it, Phil, I think he was much better than he gives himself credit for. And I think it would take a really, really strong effort from Quinn Miners to push him for the starting job this year. That doesn't mean that
drafted him in the 3rd round. I mean, there's got to be something there.
He drafted Lloyd Cushenberry in the 3rd round.
But I'm saying Lloyd Cushenberry played a season for the Broncos. After the season, the Broncos drafted Quinn Miners in the 3rd round.
Yeah, it's true, but I don't see. I think Lloyd Cushenberry is the day one starting center, and maybe if things go south during the season, there's a chance they take a look at Quinn Miners. But I view that more of a thing for the future.
And Quinn can do more than just play center, so it's not like it's just that, and that's what they're looking at. So to be fair,
so I don't, when I pick 5 guys of you got to get out there, you got to prove yourself, or you got to, Lloyd is not necessarily one that comes to mind.
Got it. What about defensive line? Do you feel like they're in a good spot there? Anybody who's got something to prove there?
Maybe like a McTelvin Agim could have something to prove there. 3rd round pick. You're big on those guys.
Those 3rd round picks.
Yeah, you do. The Broncos have had a lot of them. I think 5 3rd round picks in the last 2 years. I think you're supposed to get 1 pick per round, so I don't really understand that, but it's just how it works. Defensive line is interesting to me, Phil, because I think that people just kind of assume this defense is going to be amazing, be top 3. To me, you've got a really good starting defensive line, in Draymond Jones, Mike Purcell, and Shelby Harris. And then, if you're a nickel or dime, maybe you probably have 2 of those guys on the field. Maybe there's times where you only have 1 of those guys on the field. So it's not always going to be an issue, but the depth behind them, you've got Shamar Stephen, who is tested, but then you've got Deshaun Williams, Jonathan Harris, McTelvin Agim, Marquise Spencer. To me, if one of those guys who's a starter gets hurt, you're going to have questions quickly. And it's not the only spot. I look at outside linebacker too. Somebody behind Malik Reed is going to have to prove themselves as that 4th outside linebacker, whether that's Derek Tuska, whether that's Jonathan Cooper, whether that's any of the undrafted guys they've brought in. I mean, that to me is also something to pay attention to, because listen, we all want Vaughn and Bradley to have 15 sacks apiece, but we know Bradley's
20 sacks each is what I
20 each. Okay.
Yeah,
so we know Bradley struggled with injuries. Vaughn's played 8 games the last 2 years. If one of them misses a game or 2, you need somebody to spell Malik Reed. And so, and Phil, to clarify, by spell, I mean give him a break, not spell it letter. I think you could. Come on, you can get there.
IK.
Perfect. Nice. REID.
Huh?
A little joke there. But so no, that's another group that need somebody to prove themselves as a backup. But when we're talking about starters, I think the guys I named before probably are at the top of that list. And then I know we'll get to him, but I do think Melvin Gordon has something to prove, just because they drafted Javonte Williams in the 2nd round.
Oh boy. 1
round higher than the 3rd round.
That is how that works.
We know Melvin's in the last year of his contract. We know how high they are on Javonte. So I mean, Melvin the other day said, hey, it's not Melvin versus Javonte, but in some ways, like, they are going to battle for carries. And so it'll be interesting to see how Melvin comes out in training camp. I think he needs I don't know how much run he'll get during the preseason, but I think you want to see some good work out of him in the training camp.
Eric, let's just jump right into our running back conversation. That was a nice transition.
I saved it for last so we could
You're a
just.
professional. You're a professional. Yeah. Uh, yeah. I think you want him to say it's not Melvin versus Javante. It's Melvin and Javante.
Versus each other.
You don't want to say versus each other.
Oh, got it. No verses. Against.
But
Fighting. Unity. What's the word you want to use?
yeah, I want unity.
Javante and Melvin pushing each other to be better.
That's really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Javante and Melvin with something to prove against each other.
Ooh, nice. They're making each other better.
Yeah. There's no loser in the battle. There's just someone with something to prove.
Yes. No losers here on the neutral zone. Yeah. We don't talk like that.
Except for you.
It is interesting because when Melvin came here last year, you were like, okay, what about him and Philip Lindsay? And then they added Javante, said goodbye to Philip Lindsay, and then now it's almost the same exact situation heading into this year. And so that is an interesting narrative. I mean, I think if they were like really happy with how Melvin played last year, they wouldn't have done this. But not quite the case. And I think that even Melvin himself would say that he has something to prove heading into his second year here. He's mentioned on, I think it was a Jim Rome show or something, that he really likes Denver. He hopes to make this a long-term type of deal and that he wants to prove it this year. So I do think.
He said that on the Eric Dalala show, Phil. He told me that.
You have a separate show?
No, I would never do that to you.
Oh, you picked up the phone and you called him.
Yeah.
Did we hear that interview on the show?
No, because I like to have guys be comfortable. We go on the record, off the record, above the record, below the record.
Like you're like, hey, Melvin, just so you know, we might be using this for the neutral zone. They just tense right up. They're like, oh my God.
Yeah. They're like, I don't trust Phil. He's gonna skew my words.
You gotta do it like Shannon Sharp does. You just call him and we'll be live right on. We'll do a
Can
live.
I call him now? Should we get him now?
Yeah, let's get him right now. Yeah. So he told Eric Dalala, I guess, this guy, Eric Dalala. Not sure who that is, but he said he wants to make this a permanent thing here, where he plays here for a long time, and so I do think you still need two running backs, especially with the 17th game this year. But knowing these guys, they want the ball in their hands. They want to be in the end zone. They want to be celebrating. They want to get the yardage. But at some point, when it's crunch time, you got to decide who's going to be out there. But I don't know. I think that guy's definitely Melvin right now. But in Behind the Broncos, No Shortcuts, episode 3, I think, episode 4 maybe, behind BTV and Ep 4, we heard that Javante Williams was the number one running. Why are you laughing?
Drinking water.
We did hear that Javante Williams was the number one guy on the Broncos board. So they're really high on him. It's going to be interesting to see how things play out as the year goes along.
Yeah, and last year, when Melvin, had like a fumble issue, which didn't happen nearly as often as people would have you think. There were like 2 examples where maybe it made any sort of impact. The Broncos didn't really have a chance to go to Philip. Like, I know people love Philip Lindsay.
Ooh, are you going to bash Philip Lindsay right now?
I'm not going to bash him. But like,
people love him, but at times he was a liability in the passing game because of his inability to catch the ball super well or pass block super well. And so when Philip Lindsay came on the field, you knew this is going to be a run for the most part. And so it limits, I think, what you can do. Javante doesn't have those limitations. For everything we've heard, he's good as a pass blocker. I've seen him be good at catching the ball out of the backfield. We know he's a powerful runner. And so I do think now you're going to be able to, it might be a little bit more of a split than maybe Melvin would like, because I do think Javante's skill set is really good and allows them to be interchangeable without tipping off a defense what you're about to do. Eric, like I mentioned with the center position going on and getting Quinn Miners, these front office executives, they're not just out here making willy-nilly moves. You know what I mean? They're making moves with purpose. They thought about what they're doing here. The Broncos traded up in the second round and drafted Javonte Williams. They didn't just do that for fun. They were like, we need this guy. We're really high on this guy. And by placing a second round, using a second round pick on him, that shows you that they felt that was a position of need. They wanted to address this early on, and that's why they did that. So however you want to interpret that for what it means for Melvin Gordon, they did that with intent.
Yeah, no doubt about that.
So the same way that they let Philip Lindsay walk, do you know what I mean? Like they did that with intent. That means they didn't feel like Philip Lindsay and Melvin Gordon, that combination worked together. They tried it for a year, didn't really work. Now they bring in Javonte Williams. We'll see if that works. But Eric,
you heard it here first. When the Broncos draft somebody or release somebody, they intend to do it. It's not just an accident.
That's not what we're here to talk about, Eric. We're here to talk about Melvin Gordon's comments that he thinks this could be the best running back group in the NFL. Your response. That's like a Larry King here. Yeah, he says this. Huh? What do you have to say for yourself?
Yeah, I mean, anything's possible. Is that a good answer? I mean, to me, to have the best running back room in the NFL, you've got to have at least one really elite player. And we've seen at times that Melvin has been that when he's been a Pro Bowler, but he's got to get to like all pro status himself, and then also have Javonte get to like 5 touchdowns or something and 500, 600 yards to consider that. Now, they might be difficult to play against because they're physically imposing guys, and by the end of the season, you're not going to want to tackle them. But like Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt are probably a better running back duo than them. Alvin Kamara in New Orleans and whoever's, I think Latavius Murray's there now, anyone who's there, like that's a better running back group. So, and really anywhere, like whoever's playing behind Derrick Henry, that's probably a better running back group just because Derrick Henry is so good. Now, again, it doesn't mean they can't have a really good year, but Melvin Gordon is kind of behind like that Aaron Jones, Christian McCaffrey, some of the other guys I mentioned, Dalvin Cook. So if Melvin can elevate his game to that level, and then Javonte can play well, I do think they've got a strong group. But it's just to say they're number one is a stretch. I'd say they should aim to be, hey, can you get in the top 5? That's to me a more realistic goal.
Derrick Henry is an entire running back group just on his own. Okay, like he doesn't need 2 or 3 other people. He is the group, and he's the best group. I do like though that Melvin has this mindset. Do you know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah.
You need to have that edge. You've got to have that fire, that passion, and I think that maybe he doesn't need to tell the media that, but maybe he needs to have that though. So I do appreciate where he's coming from. I do like the passion that he has to be the best. And when you see Melvin Gordon run out on that football field, he doesn't look like everybody else. This guy is a physical specimen. And if he can find a way to put it all together, him cutting his hair, maybe that's a sign that he's like, I'm ready to turn a new leaf over, Eric, maybe, you don't read into that. You don't like that. You don't care.
I'm not talking about how Melvin cutting his hair impacts anything on the field.
Eric, I remember when Carmelo Anthony cut his hair, that was a big deal. And he was like, I'm a new Carmelo Anthony now. This is a new Melvin Gordon.
I support you, and I will sit here and listen as you talk about Melvin Gordon's hair and how it has any sort of impact on his football game, but I don't buy it.
This show loves hair. We talk about hair on this show.
True.
Okay? We talk about the Q's hair. How have you thought the Q's hair has been looking out there?
I haven't been nearly as close as you, Phil.
Yeah. It looked pretty good to me. Looks pretty good to me.
I'll take your word for it.
Okay, last thing to talk about here with Melvin is that he says the Broncos aren't getting the respect that they deserve. But then he kind of went back on that a little bit and said, well, okay, last year we had a losing season and respect comes with winning. But he feels like not enough people are talking about the Broncos.
Yeah, I mean, he answered his own question Like people are not talking about the Broncos because they finished last in the AFC West last year. They've been 5 years without a playoff appearance. And probably most importantly, the quarterback question is not answered. The Broncos have been talked about quite a bit as a potential destination for hypothetical quarterbacks out there, but
they're very real quarterbacks, Eric.
That's true. Real quarterbacks hypothetically playing here.
Yeah.
I think Denver's gotten a decent amount of attention. I think the people that are tuned in have said, hey, this is one of the most talented rosters in the league. They've done a nice job building this up. The receiving core is good. The defense is really good. Secondary is nice. But yeah, they're not going to get, when you've 10 or 11 losses in a row to the Chiefs, like no one's going to pick you to win the division until like either you have a quarterback or that streak is snapped. Like there are some people I've seen, Phil, talking about, hey, can the Chargers challenge for the division? And it's like, well, maybe, because they took the Chiefs to the wire last year. I think they might have even won one of them, if I remember correctly. Justin Herbert played really well, was rookie of the year. Those are the things you need to be talked about as a contender. Like a nice running back room is nice, and like having a good secondary is really nice, but we know what moves the needle, Phil, and you're not getting ratings by talking about if the Broncos running back room can turn them into Super Bowl contenders, whether it's fair or not.
Eric, I'm still losing sleep over not being on Monday Night Football this year.
Exactly.
It lit a fire under me, and I'm upset about it still. But yeah, you got to win, and then next year you'll get talked about. It definitely comes with winning. You got to prove it out on the field. The Broncos have not done that the last couple of years. So if you want to change that narrative, you got to go out there and improve it. So, all right, Eric, should we get to our favorite part of the show? Shoutouts?
Yeah.
We love shoutouts. Who are you going to shout out?
Liz Gerald's.
Yes.
Parentheses Manis.
Yeah. Liz, parentheses Manis, and parentheses
Gerald's. Yeah.
Shout out Liz Manis. Nice little event last Saturday in the Montbello neighborhood at the Denver Broncos Boys and Girls Club, Eric. Organized a march for peace through the neighborhood there. A lot of Broncos showed up to support. It was a pretty cool little event. I was there, and two people in particular at the Denver Broncos Boys and Girls Club really organized this event, and it was impressive to see the whole neighborhood come out. And Jerry Jeudy was there, KJ Hamler was there, Tim Patrick, Tyree Cleveland. There were a lot of Broncos there. Justin Simmons, obviously, the main person who worked with them through the RISE program, and even George Payton was there. So that was pretty cool.
And you were there.
I was there, and so was Ben Swanson.
Nice.
I heard you were in Las Vegas.
I was at Von Miller's Pass Rush Summit, teaching the young pass rushers of the next generation.
Eric, I'm not going to lie. Whenever I see video of these pass rush summits, it doesn't look like they're doing a whole lot. It looks like, like DeMarcus Ware is doing like these hand things. It looks like they're learning like karate maybe or something. That's what it always looks like. It doesn't look like a whole lot of teaching, but you've been to a lot of these. You know what it's like. It's a big value there, huh?
Yeah, I do. They're not doing intense on-field work, but you don't want guys to get hurt in this setting. I do think they're learning things, though. And so I think there's a reason that they've continued to hold them, and that some guys have come back year after year. I think there was a bigger presence maybe virtually than non-virtually this year, but we'll have to see where it goes. And hopefully Von Miller is still a Bronco hosting the Von Miller Pass Rush Summit in future years.
Because you're going to be there if that's the case.
Exactly. I'll be there regardless. I'll say, Vaughn, you need me to be there. I'll be there.
No matter what, providing the coverage. Yeah. Any other shout outs you'd like to make, Eric?
Yeah, I'll shout out our left tackle, Garrett Bowles. He talked today, Phil, about his son, Kingston, who is 4 and is dealing with a speech disorder, apraxia of speech. And, very hard. It's a cognitive disorder, very hard to learn kind of how to form words, how to consistently find those patterns. You can tell that it's an emotional topic for Garrett. He was talking about his son's ability um, to learn a couple words and how much that meant to him. His son's working with a specialist, and Garrett's made it clear he's going to work to bring some awareness to this issue, which he's already done with several other disabilities. And obviously, we know Garrett himself struggled with learning disabilities. And so, just a shout out to him for being so open and honest. It's been something they've been dealing with the last few weeks. Fans may have seen tweets that, he hasn't been here for personal reasons. I think his explanation today kind of sheds some light on that. But obviously, Garrett and his son, Kingston, who everyone will remember is the baby that was held up on draft day, they all have our support.
Most definitely. I mean, one thing that Garrett Bowles has always been was open and honest, and he's been himself, and he's been real. And I think everybody should appreciate that because, anytime you can, step into a spotlight like that and draw attention to whatever cause it is, there's value in it. And there's probably some other family dealing with something very similar to this that they find out that Garrett Bowles is, in a similar situation. It can provide a lot of motivation. So nice to see that from Garrett Bowles, most definitely. So a couple of good shout outs there, Eric.
Hey, do what I can.
That's very nice. Should we get to some voicemails?
Sure, let's do that.
Let's start with our first friend, Tom Agnetti.
Hey, gentlemen, this is Tom Agnetti again calling. I figure I'll just keep calling each week until someone else jumps on the bandwagon and replaces me. I'm trying to get that aspect of your show rolling here. I, as always, really enjoyed the show, and you guys had a lot of interesting insights into Ring of Fame players and those things, and I feel like it's the same thing with the Hall of Fame. If the story of the Broncos in a positive light cannot be told without the player, I don't know if the timeline is necessarily the discerning factor, but I see your perspective on that. There's definitely a few players in the 70s and 80s that I would have loved to have seen in there that I don't think are in. And then I just was listening to Coach Fangio's press conference on, I guess it's Tuesday here, and I'm wondering if Eric was the one getting scolded for not lowering his virtual hand by the mediator. Have a great day, guys. Thanks again.
Tom, thank you very much. That probably was you, Eric.
No.
In trouble.
I would never get scolded for such a thing. I put my hand up once. I asked my 3 to 5 questions, and I put my hand down.
3 to 5, exactly.
Yeah.
Because you don't take the first answer. You don't just like say, okay, that's good enough. You hammer the point.
Yeah, and I will say today we were advised by one of our PR gurus, Jordan, to respect the other journalists and be aware of how many follow-ups we asked. I don't know if somebody reached Tom. If you reached out to Jordan, we're gonna have a little chat. Yeah, Tom mentioned people calling in. We do have some people that used to call, like Jeff Flanagan, Brandon from Iowa. I hope those guys are doing okay because we haven't heard from them in a while. So Brandon, Jeff, Bill Laffin, he normally sends an email.
Yeah.
If you guys are okay out there, maybe they're just maybe they actually take an off season, but there's no off season for us.
No. Eric, I was also going to mention you don't get scolded because you're a man. You're an adult. You don't take anything from anybody. Respect the fellow journalists. You're like, no, I got my own questions. Okay, you have your own agenda. You don't take that.
Yeah, I'm like, if they ask better questions, I'd let them ask more questions.
A small child gets scolded. Okay, you're a man. Yeah, and you're on a mission.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Tom, for always sending in a voicemail there, leaving one of those. Appreciate that. Hopefully that gets the ball rolling. We need more people like Tom. Also, shout out Tom. He did send a tweet that he was watching the Neutral Zone right in his living room on his main TV. So
your poor other family members.
hopefully more people do the same as Tom. Okay, send us your pictures of you watching the Neutral Zone right in your living room, because that's what we want to do. But Tom, your magic has worked because we did get another voicemail.
Bronco Mel right back at you. PA, California. Phil and Eric, what's going on? Just tapping in. You guys are doing a great job. And let's touch on the subject of defensive line. Let's touch on the subject of special teams. And I know that Eric Delilah, you're over there with a big smile on your face because Drew Lock was pressing in 11-on-11 drills. Be patient. The kid's got game. Hey, you two keep up the good work, man. I really appreciate what you two do. Very informative. I tap in every day at work. And talk to you guys soon, man. Just keep up the good work. Peace.
Appreciate that voicemail from California there. The kid's got game, Eric. Why are you smiling like that?
That's funny. I'll say one thing, Phil, because I think there's this notion that we like want one quarterback to win the battle over the other. That's not true. We want the best for the Broncos. A lot of media members, Phil, will say, I don't care if the Broncos are good or not. I just want a good story. I work for the team. I would love for the Broncos to be good. That's all I want, Phil. We want those Super Bowl rings. So we are, we're doing the best to tell you these stories and give our fair, unbiased opinions. But we also we want them to do well. And so nobody's rooting for Drew Lock to throw interceptions or to press or anything like that. We'll talk about it if it happens, and we'll give you our evaluation of why or who's the better option. But it doesn't mean that we're rooting for it. So Drew's a nice guy. I hope Drew goes out and Teddy goes out, and that they both throw 5 touchdowns a day, and that this is a really difficult decision. But it's no one's rooting for interceptions. But thank you for listening. Did you say Bronco Bill? Is that what he said?
I'm not sure if we got a name.
Okay.
Or maybe it got cut off there a little. I didn't get it.
Got it.
But I side with the voicemail, okay? Because I'm a man of the people, okay? Yeah. I'm here for NZ Nation, and I appreciate the voicemail. And you were smiling. I saw you. You were smiling. No, that's not true.
You were inside eating lunch during 11-on-11, I think.
We do want the team to do well, but I always side with the listener. I'm here for them. I represent them.
That's true.
Yeah. But please keep the voicemails coming. 707 neutral. We love to play them. They bring a certain element to the show that just it's hard to replicate that, Eric. We love that. We love the voicemails.
We do.
Yeah. You could also leave an email. Am I saying that right?
That's right. neutralzoneshow@gmail.com.
Yeah. You could also hit us up on Twitter at Eric Dalala with an A, at Phil Milani with a PH. Send us your pictures of you watching the Neutral Zone right in your living room, because we want that. We need that. I need that, Eric. Yeah.
Perfect.
And also let me know if you think that Melvin Gordon cutting his hair is a big deal or not.
Yeah.
It is. Let's just face it. It is. So those are all the ways you can get in touch with the show. Leave a comment right here on YouTube. Oftentimes, Eric calls me on a Thursday afternoon crying. He's like, they don't like me, and I have to console him. So they're like, Phil is the best. He's so smart, and he's got great hair.
And then you wake up.
That's a Thursday afternoon, Eric. I'm at work. I don't go to sleep.
Yeah, you've been taking naps at work for years.
All right. Well, that's going to wrap up this episode of the Neutral Zone. Eric, we should let listeners know that we've got some countdown to training camp editions of the Neutral Zone coming up here as we get set for Broncos training camp 2021. quarterback competition, Drew Lock versus Teddy Bridgewater, day 332. We'll have it all covered. Okay. So be sure to tune in for every episode of Countdown to Camp coming up here in the next month. Are you fired up, Eric?
I'm ready to go in more ways than one.
That is going to do it for us for this episode. For Eric Bilal, I'm Phil Milani. You've been listening to
The Neutral Zone.